back up. Everybody back up.
In 2019, hundreds of spectators packed Congress to witness a hearing that many hoped would be a step towards the U.S. government taking accountability for the wrongs of slavery.
Can we get that door closed?
Yep, the R word. Reparations.
The typical black family in this country has 1/10 the wealth of the typical white family. The matter of reparations is one of making amends and direct redress, but it is also a question of citizenship.
Despite the sense of promise inspired by that late spring day on Capitol Hill, the bill has yet to make any significant progress. Black folks in the U.S. could argue that things haven't been easy since they were promised 40 acres and a mule more than 150 years ago. Although it's difficult to place a dollar amount on the historic injustices experienced by black people, reparations are seen by many as a starting point for addressing a long legacy of systemic oppression and racism that has helped shape the black experience in this country.
You could at least lifted him up off the ground, bro. We wouldn't even have tripped, bro.
The lack of movement of this federal reparations bill hasn't deterred politicians on the local level from taking matters into their own hands.
Starting on January 1st, 2020, all recreational cannabis retailer tax will be transferred to the reparation fund until the fund has...
In the last year, the city of Evanston, Illinois made history.
A reparation policy is our best step in repairing the demonstrable damages to black families, black neighborhoods, black institutions, and black businesses.
Alderman Fleming?
Aye.
Alderman Fisk? Alderman Braithwaite?
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons?
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin?
No.
Alderman Ravel?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey?
Aye.
That night, Evanston City Council became the first governing body in the U.S. at any level to explicitly enact reparations for black residents. As local reparations become more of a possibility, observers speculate that the city's efforts could serve as a template for others to follow.
All right, Resolution 126-R-19, establishing a City of Evanston funding source to vote local reparations, passes on a 8-1 vote.
Since then, Asheville, North Carolina, and Chicago, along with the state of California, have all passed reparations legislation, although Evanston is the only place with an actual plan. Despite this feat, leaders in this wealthy, progressive college town have their work cut out for them. Here, white families out-earn their black neighbors by an average of nearly $46,000. And that's not by accident. Local historian and archivist Dino Robinson breaks down how policy designed by white leaders of the past created these disparities. Can you describe to me the history of redlining specific to Evanston?
What's interesting with Evanston is that the Fifth Ward was a centralized black community, and that entire Fifth Ward was zoned D2, which told the banks, do not lend, we're not going to put any mortgages in that area, we're not going to invest in that area for economic development. The write-up on that said this is a heavily Negro population and avoid it at all costs, basically. And that informed for generations how real estate agencies engaged in the community, how banks engaged with residents that live in those zoned areas, whether or not you could get a loan or not get a loan. And if you did get a loan, maybe that interest rate is much higher than in other areas. So that put together, kind of set up decades and generations of divestment in an area, in depressing areas, and then also develops a stigma. Look at this poor community, they can't do anything on their own. Well, they're blocked from everything.
Hallelujah. Glory, glory. Hallelujah. As I lay my burden down. Glory, glory. Hallelujah. Since I lay my burden down.
Evanston's black population is shrinking. Lawmakers argue that black families are being priced out of the city due to higher cost of living and stagnant wages. Leaders are hoping reparations can remedy disparities in black home ownership that date back to segregation. Banks approved nearly 1,500 mortgages to home buyers in Evanston in 2019. Fewer than 100 of those went to black applicants. This is mirrored across the United States, where black families own fewer homes than did 30 years ago.
One of these syllables makes a real word to complete the sentence. Watch first.
Like many in town, Fifth Ward resident Jasmine Edwards is on the verge of being priced out of the city. What would you like to see from the reparations that they're trying to implement here in Evanston?
I would like to be a homeowner. I would like to get something consistent for me and my children to the point where we're not moving every year. If I was to get any part of the reparation, at least for housing, we could do magic with that.
You going through some hardships. Other folk, sometimes they can't afford to pay rent. This reparation stuff, what makes you think black folks are more deserving than anybody else?
We're all deserving. It's just that black people clearly wasn't deserving for so many years. I just feel like I'm repeating what my mom did, what her mom did, and so forth. I'm a crybaby. I'm such a crybaby. Because my situation is real. This is a real situation, and there's so many of us. This is the Fifth Ward. I don't know what that means to anybody else, but this is an area where, we all struggle together. I just need a push. You know how you get on a bike? And your mom gotta push you.
They push you down there.
Yeah, I just need one of those.
You can pedal on your own, but you need a push.
Exactly. And that's what reparation means to me. It's just a little push.
Fifth Ward Alderman Robin Rue Simmons is overseeing the rollout of the program. But for a community with varying needs, not one size is going to fit all. When some people hear about reparations, they think 40 acres and a mule. What does reparations in Evanston look like?
It's important when you do reparation work that the injured community is leading the decisions. There were hundreds, definitely dozens of specific recommendations in various ways.
So today we have our first discussion on remedy. As we work through this reparation process.
There were several recommendations presented to prevent black residents from leaving Evanston and help them build generational wealth. So far, the city has approved $25,000 for eligible individuals to use as down payment assistance to help buy a home, or for existing black homeowners to use for renovations or pay down their mortgage.
So we're talking a benefit that is equivalent to cash. It will be for home buyers that are mortgage qualified. And with that being a concern, we already have inequities in, lending. There's predatory lending.
I was about to say, that's layered, right?
There's so many layers to it. The more work we do, the more we uncover is needed and the more demand there is.
One of the issues when it comes to reparations is when black folks hear it, they're like, it's never gonna happen. And when white folks hear it, they're like, we ain't paying for it because we didn't do it, right? So where is this money coming from?
Our city is different. We have said yes to reparations. We had an 8-1 vote in favor of reparations, and we are funding it with a recreational cannabis sales tax.
So to be clear, it's coming from weed sales.
Yes, adult recreational cannabis sales tax revenue, weed sales, and that's so appropriate because in our city, 71% of our marijuana arrests were in the black community, and we are just about 16% of the population. So we have suffered damages above any other community. If that industry is now legal, that it certainly needs to come to the benefit of those that have been most damaged by it.
On a national scale, reparations is controversial for a number of reasons. There's people trying to figure out how much money to give to whom. How do you determine who you give it to, who's black, who's not?
So on a local scale, it's just as difficult. I look wide and far for an example on what to do, and it hasn't been implemented before. So right now, we have decided to move forward with residents that have lived in Evanston between 1919, where we have black racist zoning policy on our books, in 1969 when fair housing was passed, or a direct descendant of someone during that time. Now, in the case of those that aren't legacy families, they can show a housing discrimination. And I've asked that our law department come up with a list of ways that a black resident can show housing discrimination so we don't put a burden on them to, fight a legal claim. But to that point about who is Black, those are details that we have yet to determine. For me, if you have checked the box of Black, if you have Black skin, then that shows that you have lived the Black experience.
What does a successful reparations initiative look like?
So although this is a victory, it's a huge commitment. We still have so much work to do, and the success comes when the empowerment comes in the Black community.
What happens if this doesn't work?
I don't believe that this is the answer to our complete justice and equity here in Evanston. I do believe it is a bold step that should be followed by other donors and institutions in this city. This took generations. It took a century for us to get to this position and these disparities. And it's gonna take some time for us to work through it. So I'm not okay with us not trying. I'm not okay with us doing more ceremony and passing resolutions and proclamations that do not have an action plan or do not have a funding stream. It has to work. It's gonna work. We're gonna work together to get it done. We're gonna stay committed, and it's gonna take all of us.